Alrighty everyone, hello and welcome. I'm Philip Thomas and this is my 2008 Ford Focus. With over 225,000 miles on the odometer, it is no surprise that this car needs a fair bit of work. Lately, it's developed a brake fluid leak that I traced to the driver's side rear drum brake. More specifically, the drum cylinder had failed internally. This has the immediate effect of causing a brake fluid leak, but also a more serious long-term issue of reduced braking performance. While there are some great videos on replacing all of the rest of the brake hardware on this car, none of them seem to show exactly how to get this cylinder off. It should simply be a removal of these two bolts, not these two, but the ones behind them. But one of them is almost impossible to get at without a bit of prying. So today I'll show you exactly what you need to do to get this removed and replaced. Let's start with what you're going to need. You'll need a 13mm wrench, an 11mm wrench, an 8mm wrench, some sort of pry bar or screwdriver, or in my case this pair of adjustable pliers, and something like a rag or terry cloth. Of course, you'll also need the tools for a standard brake job, which I have scattered all around me. But I assume you already have those, and you're at the point where you're ready to attack this cylinder, which, as you can see, I've already replaced, and all of the associated drum brake hardware, so hopefully I'll be able to give you guys a better look at this. Now, a quick mention to safety: always wear eye protection and gloves when dealing with brakes, especially on a car. If this cylinder gets squeezed or this line comes off and it's under pressure, brake fluid could go flying and it could go into your eyes, and it could cause you some severe pain or even damage your eyes. Also wear gloves because you might get pinched here or something like that, or a spring might snap against your finger, and you want to have that extra protection to make sure that you can get the job done safely. So a nice pair of gloves, and in my case just some sunglasses to keep me a little bit extra safe. And now here's how to remove the brake cylinder. You'll start by using the 13mm wrench to loosen, and then remove Once that nut is free, the brake line can be removed and it will start dripping brake fluid. So I'm going to move it over to the side, and I'm going to use that terry cloth we talked about earlier to just cover this thing up. And you might also want a rubber band to just wrap that up a little bit so you're not dealing with dripping happening all over your work area. Now we can use the 11mm wrench to, you guessed it, loosen and remove the nut holding in the bleeder valve. Oh, and there is a really nice look at one of those two 8mm bolts that we'll need to remove to actually remove the drum cylinder. With the bleeder removed, you can see it right there inside of the wrench. It's time to get at these two 8mm bolts. There's number 1, and there's number 2. Now, number 1 is going to be pretty easy. All we have to do is take our 8mm and attack it a little bit. But number 2 is going to be a little bit more difficult, because I've got my wrench right here and, well, I can just barely get at it. I can just touch the bolts a little bit, and then I'm out of area. So let me show you a cool trick that I taught myself to make access to that bolt a little easier. And it starts by removing this bolt. We're just gonna get some traction on it. I'll go from to the left a good bit, and then up. And we're gonna get this bolt taken out all the way. And now, with that 8mm bolt removed, and by the way, once it gets pretty loose, you can just use your fingers and go like that, and you can take it off if that's a little easier for you. Now we're going to take our flat bar or screwdriver or adjustable pliers, and we're going to go right in behind this thing and we're just going to pry it away from the back of the drum. Now, after a sufficient amount of prying, we can remove our tool. You could also use a 13 or even larger wrench if you had it to just pull on the back of the cylinder. Get it a little clean there. And now you can see that it's partially in through the mounting hole, which means that we'll have much better access to that little 8mm bolt. You can see now that I have just enough clearance to grab my wrench. And I have bent this wrench a little bit. You don't have to, but if you have a hammer and like a brick, you can bend this just a little bit extra to get a little bit better access to your bolt. But now, I can get on there right about here, and that's going to let us take the bolt off. And now, with that second bolt removed, the brake cylinder is very loosely held in, and you can just take it out. Now is also a good time to do some inspection. I'm just going to grab it and I'm going to squeeze it, and some fluid's going to come out. But what you're looking for is the actuation of these two, I guess, rods or pistons. If I press it, it rebounds right back into my finger. And the other one should do about the same. And now, let's pretend that this is our new cylinder because, well, it is the new cylinder. I just took it out for the purposes of this video. But now, we can take it and we can put it back in. Make sure that the two holes on the bottom align with those two holes on the bottom of the mounting hole. We'll pop it in. And then we'll start by putting in that other bolt, the one that we just took out. We'll get it hand started just a little bit in the back of that hole. Taking off your gloves will make this process easier, but basically you're going to press and hold against the brake cylinder, while at the same time using your other hand, you're going to put that bolt in through the back. And now that we have the bolt started by hand, you can see that the cylinder is kind of floppy in its mounting hole. But we're going to take our wrench, and we're just going to start tightening that down until it gets to as tight as you can possibly get it. And I'm not going to give you a specific torque spec, because honestly, I don't know how you could get a torque wrench in here. But you want to get it as tight as possible, because ultimately, you're not going to be able to get it as tight as you might think, because as we're tightening this bolt, you can see the brake cylinder is moving in ever so slightly with each turn of that bolt. And so it's going to have less and less clearance between the bolt and the wrench for us to actually get in there and be able to tighten it. You can see I'm already having issues, so just get on there as much as you can, tighten it within reason, and then we'll do the same with the other bolt. Now, one thing that you might run into is you're not able to get the brake cylinder in to get the other bolt in. And if that happens, and it doesn't always happen, it didn't happen for me on the other side, you'll just want to remove slightly, or I guess loosen, this bolt ever so slightly so that you can just push the cylinder in a little bit, get that other bolt started, and then you'll finish tightening up this one right there. And now with both bolts started, and again, you might not have to loosen this one. It really just depends on kind of exactly how your cylinder is all worn out and all that stuff, as well as just the mounting hole. But now we're going to tighten this one as much as absolutely possible, and you're not going to be able to get it that ridiculously tight, especially with this little 8mm wrench, and also because you're just going to be losing traction on it. But when you get this bolt started, do not tighten it all the way, or else you really won't be able to get much torque into this bolt. And looks like that's going to be it. I can't really get at it any more than I can right there. So now we're going to focus on this bolt. We're just going to tighten it, and you can see I've got a lot more room to play around here. To just tighten this bolt down. And two quick things I want to mention before we talk about the rest of the process for putting this cylinder back together and getting it incorporated with the brake system of the car. First is cleaning. If you drop one of your tools, make sure that you have a can of brake clean next to you so that you can clean it off if it falls into dirt like I've got here. And cleaning your hands too. This rag that we have on the hard brake line is also good to just give your fingers a little bit of a wipe when necessary. And on the mention of brake clean, you can see right in here there is so much brake fluid that's come out from this line. What you want to do with these two bolts installed is you want to go ahead and spray everything down with brake clean. Also, your cylinder probably came with something like this. These little caps that go in to these holes right here. You want to install these caps when you're using brake clean so that you don't mess up any of the internals of that drum cylinder or that brake cylinder, because that would be bad. Now we're good to go ahead and spray this thing down. And speaking of things that your cylinder might have come with, it might have come with a pre-installed rubber O-ring. And you might think that with the gasket from the factory there that we need to clean that off or anything. Nope. You can leave that factory gasket right there. You can see mine's nice and squishy and elastic still. And it'll help give us an extra seal on top of the O-ring that comes installed on the cylinder. Now, if yours doesn't come installed on the cylinder, it might be in the little parts bag that came with it. You'll just stretch that O-ring over the oval part of the cylinder that pokes through the drum bake, that pokes through the back of the drum, and that'll be how you get that done, but mine was pre-installed. Now what I'm going to do is clean everything off with some brake clean, and then we'll install the hard brake line and that fitting. And now that the brake cleaner has had time to dry, you can see that where the brake fluid was, it's actually absorbed the dirt that was on the suspension, and the brake clean just blasted it all off. I think that's kind of funny. Also, don't be afraid to use brake cleaner inside of the brake parts. That's kind of what it's for, brake parts cleaner. Anyways, with our cylinder firmly mounted into place, kind of disappointed about this part, not gonna lie, but with some fluid pressure it should be working normally because this is a brand new part. But now it's time to take these plugs out, and you can do that by just using your fingertips, or fingernails, I guess, fingernail and fingertips, like so. And now we're going to install that hard brake line. I'm putting on a glove for this just because I don't feel like touching all the brake fluid that's coming out of this thing, if there is any coming out. But be careful when you're bending this line, just like that. You don't want to be aggressive with it. You don't want to cause any damage here at this other joint. We're just going to bend it down and around. And now we need to get this into the left hole of the cylinder. So we can bend that in there, but that's not going to cut it, because when we go to thread this bolt in, it actually has such a fine thread pitch that we need to just bend that brake line a little bit to make sure that things are going to line up as easily and as well as possible with the thread pitch inside of the cylinder, so that things just kind of go in the way they are supposed to. And you'll know you've done it right when you bend the brake line just a little bit this way or that way or whatever, and you just thread the bolt a little bit, and it goes in with almost no resistance. And then once you get it tightened by hand, you can take your 13mm wrench and just give that a good old tightening. Now, something to look at is I've got my 13mm and I can't really put any more power into that bolt. But the bolt isn't threaded in all the way. What is going on? Well, that's just how it's designed, to be totally honest with you. So once you have that threaded in with your wrench as much as it wants to go in, that's totally good. And you can see I got a little bit of dirt on here because my glove wasn't perfectly clean, but none of it went inside of the component. And I can see a little bit wants to go in here, so I'm going to take my finger and just get all that crap off of there. And now we'll find our bleeder valve, and he'll go in just like so. You can see it took a couple of tries for the threads to catch, but they did, and now we can use our 11mm wrench to tighten that up the rest of the way, and then you're done. If you need to do the rest of the brake job, now would be the time to do it. Then you would just bleed this by undoing the bleeder a little bit, taking off that, and, you're good to go, you're done. Congratulations, and thank you for watching.